Well, the 69 Mustang's back from dipping. We got 5 more out here.
Once upon a time, my shop would regularly fill up with classic cars. They always come in threes. Those rules still apply, but the cars have changed. This seems to be Mustang year.
This is our Mustang corral out here right now. I mean, we get one and then all of a sudden they breed and we get 4 and 5 more. I mean, we got a 69 up on the hoist that's just been painted, putting back together. We've got the 70 convertible that we just finished doing a pile of work to. Then we got the little 65 convertible, and we got the ones in progress. Another 69 Mach 1. And then we got 2 R-Code 428 Mach 1s. To get 2 in any shop at the same time is incredible. This one is getting ready to get the motor put back in it. And the other R-Code is in the metal shop, being torn down and going to be built all the way back up again.
Soon, we're going to have pretty much every year of manufacture up to 1975.
This is a lot of Mustangs.
Starting to dig into the 69 Mustang today. It got back from the dippers.
It's fairly rough, but this is the R-Code, you know, Mustang fastback, big dollar car when it's finished. We have to put a lot of panels and pieces in it after it came back from dipping. We had some Swiss cheese here and there.
Oh, look at the sun shining through all the pinholes.
Isn't that pretty?
So I put it on a rotisserie here and I welded in some braces just so it doesn't get out of shape. I'm gonna start with the roof, because that's probably one of the sole components we're gonna keep original. I've been just repairing the metalwork around the roof area right now. And then as some pieces show up, I'll start adding them into the bottom. Well, I plan on putting a new floor in, so I braced the car up so when I remove that floor piece, which is actually the structure, the car doesn't literally fold in half.
If you don't brace it, things are going to twist, and it's going to be a hell of a time getting them lined up.
So I've got a piece of metal cut out, so I think that would be an adequate patch to start with. So I'll have to do a small patch inside also on the frame structure. They call it a skeleton, actually, the inside. So I'll cut that open and I'll try to separate these spot welds where the quarter panel is.
It's important to keep this car as original as possible. We are going to be putting a fair bit of panels on it, but when it's done, it's still the original car that we started with.
I'm not a Mustang guy. I don't know what they're worth, but this guy's gonna be invested. You must really love it to want to fix it.
There are times when you say, hey, you know, maybe not do this car. Maybe it's a bad idea. But I've no doubt that the car can be pulled off. We've had worse cars in than this.
I already tried to kill my thumb this week.
If it was, you know, a $25,000 vehicle, I would say, don't do it. When it's, you know, with the 428 and the 4-speed and the options that this car had on it, you know, we're a couple hundred G's worth of vehicle. It's worthwhile doing.
Even though you'll never, ever see it, I don't want holes in the car. I've got the inner structure repaired where I made this little window. So I'm gonna weld this all flush. The roof will be one piece rather than being some Swiss cheese action. It won't leak. Time to grind her down. Smooth it all out. This will be a big project.
Janice and I are visiting the National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I've been to automotive museums all around the world, and this one is absolutely amazing. There's nothing boring. It's very theatrical. Here they have all 8 generations of Corvettes. It's, you know, from the 1953 C1 to the very latest model. So you can see the evolution of the designs up close and in person.
So this is what you see when you first come into the museum, a 1953 Corvette.
We have the great fortune of being escorted through the museum by Bob Budness and Tom Peters. Tom was one of the chief designers for Corvette for 3 generations.
For me, what defines the first generation C1 Corvette is America's first expression of a sports car that was uniquely American. What's remarkable about the C1 Corvette is how the exterior is beautifully integrated and translates into the interior, so it's one beautiful statement. The waterfall between the seats is a great example of that. It brings the body color in, and the chrome flows around the doors and into the windshield. It's just like a graceful piece of music. And this is a beautiful example of the second-gen Corvette, the 1963 split window.
And my favorite.
I mean, this is the icon. This is the car that personally inspired me. You know, it was cool when it came out. It's cool now, and 100 years from now, this will be cool and beautiful. It's timeless.
You look at a 63 Corvette, and there's nothing frumpy or old about it. And today, it is still an icon that really hasn't aged. It's one of the most beautiful cars of the 60s, and I think that's incontestable. And this is the iconic C3. Now we're at 3rd generation, the Stingrays. This is one of the greats.
Think about the times. What was going on relative to culture, music, fashion, everything. This car fit in just perfectly. In order to be noticed, you had to be a little over the top. Everything's even more bright, more colorful, you know, more of everything.
The C3 Corvette, an iconic car.
So the whole idea of restoring a car like this is to have it look just like it did when it rolled off the line.
You're selling a dream, and it's an even better dream if every guy sitting in it thinks he's a NASCAR driver.
Here we have our shell of the '69 Mustang. I just started at the roof because that's the biggest original piece we're gonna keep. So I've done some repairs in the corner there. I've repaired a few patches. I've got new B-pillars in, and we're gonna leave the factory rocker panels. Up top, they're actually in pretty good shape. I'll be able to use all of this original structure, but I'm gonna replace the bottom half of the rocker. So there's still a few repairs to do on this, but basically, as parts come in, I can keep assembling this component of the car. I'm sitting right where a big block engine would sit, and I'm separating the fender aprons from the inside of the front end of this Mustang. Here's our shock tower, and it's in amazing shape, really heavy steel. Well, this is what I'm separating right now. So I've drilled out all these little spot welds, and I'm just separating it. Sometimes it's really easy. Sometimes the spot welds are quite a bit stronger than you anticipate. So we're gonna keep these boxes. I've rebuilt where the firewall is going to weld into. When the firewall fits inside here, it has a flange that matches this exactly. And there's holes here that I'll weld up. And where I've replaced metal because it was rusted, I need new holes. So I'll put some new holes in there. This is a hole punch. It's literally a hole punch for steel. So then I fill that with a weld, and it makes a equally strong and very similar looking weld as a spot weld from the factory. Well, you could just weld everything all together, but the whole idea of restoring a car like this is to have it look just like it did when it rolled off the line. Now I have perfect 5/16 holes that I can weld up, and we're rolling. Finished product.
Janice and I are continuing our tour at the incredible National Corvette Museum.
Well, this is our C4 after 14 model years of the C3.
We did the super expressive 3rd generation, and it was time to just kind of bring it back. It's more mature. It has all that you need in terms of technology and performance, but in a more sophisticated design statement.
Well, this is our 5th generation car. This is a car that had a lot of technological differences from the first one, with the transmission in the back. Equalized the weight a little bit on this car and turned it into a car we could take to Le Mans.
That is the first year that we re-entered into Le Mans with a dedicated race team.
I mean, I know certainly that these cars did far better on the tracks. than any previous generation. I mean, you saw Corvettes winning race after race, and it was these cars.
And starting here, going forward through the next generations, you can see direct influence with our racing team and what they learned on the track and how they were inspiring and affected. You've heard of track to street, that term. This is where it started.
It's an exuberant car. What it's showing here is one of the first expression of using vinyl graphics on a production car to sort of customize a car and give the public something that they had seen on TV, and that was the Indy pace cars.
That's exactly right. This was a very popular pace car packages because the customer, the enthusiast, they love everything about sports cars and racing.
Now you can see they fully embraced this whole racing thing because that's what sells cars. You're selling a dream, and it's an even better dream if every guy sitting in it thinks he's a NASCAR driver.
Well, David, this is my C6. This is the first program I was fully responsible for, both interior and exterior from a design standpoint. And this is a refinement and a next generation expression of Corvette in so many ways. You can see influences going back to the C3 and some of the fender forms, but they're expressed in a modern, fresh way. And maybe more importantly, we let the design be influenced by our racing experience.
Yeah. So the car is becoming more refined. It's becoming a higher-end sports car. It's now something that is legitimately competitive with European sports cars. This was a car that took my breath away the first time I saw it. And I just walked around and around the car looking at all the details. I thought, wow, they've got this car right. It was dramatic, it was supercar-ish. You know, you put it next to any supercar around the world, and it can hold its own.
As you know, this is the one where we brought the Stingray name back. If you think about it, there's not many images that are more powerful in the automotive world. So I had to do something as expressive, as different, but uniquely Corvette that warranted the Stingray badge. The radiator is rocked forward on it rather than back, which gets the hood down, better airflow, which directly affects the surfaces of the car. So it says Stingray in a new, fresh way.
The most amazing thing was the fact that the taillights had finally been changed. It was very controversial. Rear taillights on Corvettes from the beginning right till the C7 were round. And you know, they'd done as much as they could do with those little round lights, and they put a whole new look in the back of it. It made it a very aggressive back end. And I just thought it was an absolute masterpiece. Wow, what an amazing piece of design. Newest incarnation of Corvette, the C8. I just had my first opportunity to drive one. Wow, what a car.
So people ask me, how long did it take you to do the C8? Well, about 70 years. The C8 is a culmination of all that we've experienced. Think about the talent, the ingenuity, the innovation that had gone before it.
You know, what follows the C8 is a mystery. There is talk about it being an electric hybrid. It sort of has to go there. I think the C8 may be the last fully gas-fueled Corvette before we move on to different technologies. I know we use iconic a lot with Corvettes, but it's clearly just because they are.
That was probably one of the most rotten cars I've ever welded up. The best miracle is that it's actually lining up pretty good.
I'm lining this knob up with the center of the dash. Is it better or the same?
No, we're way over, to be honest with you.
I'm basically done the rust repair on the Mustang. It's just insane. I'm gonna replace that. It'd be ugly to patch all this stuff. A lot of this I am gonna have to restore. Like even this panel, I'm gonna replace that. It's too rotten to really reuse. I like to try to leave as much as the original as I can. Like if there's 100 pieces and I changed 95 of them, at least there's 5 original pieces.
Talon's put hundreds of hours into the metal work on the '69 Mustang, and now he's ready to hang the fenders.
We got the new floor welded in, rockers, firewall, cowl, all the inners, quarter panels. We're gonna replace the quarter panels, so I'm gonna have to cut all this brass out of here. Hopefully the rocker will clean up nice enough to weld this to. So I just hung a door and I wanna hang the fender on and make sure we're getting stuff lined up. This car was super rotten when it came in. I mean, And then it was even worse once it was dipped. I tried to just buy a whole new body, but they weren't going for it. How about a new body?
A new body? No, anything but that.
That was probably one of the most rotten cars I've ever welded up.
Everybody looked at it and said, wow, this thing's tough. I don't know whether I would rebuild this.
The firewall's rotted right out of it too, both sides. Maybe it was flooded at some time.
I think it was dragged out of a swamp. But it looks like a car again.
This is a miracle. This whole car went back together. There's some minor adjustments on some of the bolt holes. I think it's awesome. It's starting to look like a Mustang again.
Now it's together and it looks straight. It's gonna be a gorgeous car when it's finished. Tommy and Cody are working under the dash in the 55 Crown Vic. They're installing the AC system, so they got their work cut out for them.
Yeah, it is kind of crooked. Do you think we could, does this move over a bit more?
Installing an air conditioning system in a car that never came with it can be tricky.
I'm lining this knob up with the center of the dash. So the center of the dash is the center of the radio, and then lined up with this.
Just making it fit right and look right can be a real challenge.
Is it better or the same?
No, we're way over, to be honest with you.
It's pretty easy. It's just making sure it's right where I want it. Because I know if I looked in and it wasn't dead center, it would be a little off-putting for me. Oh, that's a lot more centered than it was, but I think that's gonna work.
Tommy and Cody did a great job installing the AC system, so now we just got to see if it works.
All right, start the car. In an air conditioning system, there's a few major components. One of them is the compressor. That's gonna build your pressure in the system. I just wanna check that the compressor is gonna engage and disengage. When it gets to a certain pressure, it's going to cut off the compressor clutch. So right now it's engaged in there. It disengaged. So when the clutch stops, it stops building pressure and doesn't over-pressurize the system. And now it engaged again. Compressor's working as it should. Now let's see if Cody's getting cold air. AC's on.
AC's on. Ice cold.
Awesome. All right, let's shut her off.
The customer's going to be thrilled with it. It's pretty much ready to go.
I never thought I would spend 10 minutes watching wheels being put on a car. It's an absolutely fascinating process.
After we visited the National Corvette Museum, we went next door to see how they build the cars at the Corvette assembly plant. Our tour guide is Patrick, a nearly 30-year Corvette veteran.
So this area that we're in now, it's like the middle of General Assembly. We've got a couple of skillet lines over here behind us. We got sub-assembly going on over in front of us.
So this is sort of the center hub of the whole plant. And it's sort of the beginning of the assembly where all the parts are being marshaled to be sent off to the respective places on the assembly line where they're going to be used. It's an absolutely fascinating process. I'm just watching them put wheels on. I never thought I would spend 10 minutes watching wheels being put on a car. The tire coming down a ramp, landing on this little machine that floats on air across the floor to make it easy for him because tires are heavy and hard to place. And then he just, like, little electric gun, starts it, and then he's got this big machine, goes in and tightens them all up to torque, one good shot. I'm thinking I need one of these at the shop. I also want that car. That's the one.
So behind the glass is where we build the high-performance engines.
Pretty interesting. They've got a sort of a clean room where they're building really high-performance engines. So, and unlike usual mass production, one person is responsible for one engine. They build like 3 engines per day, but they're personally responsible from the beginning of the assembly to the end of the assembly of that particular motor, and then they get to put their name on it. I think that's pretty cool.
This is the magic part for me. Marriage.
So this is called the marriage area, and the reason for that is quite simple. This is where the body meets the chassis for the very first time. As the chassis rides up and the body comes down, they connect the shock absorbers and all the components together. They do all of that in 4.5 minutes. I was actually surprised at how slowly the line is moving, but each worker doesn't have just 30 or 50 seconds to put something on. They got about 4.5 minutes.
Most automotive assembly plants build about 60 cars per hour, but the Corvette plant, well, 8 to 10. That sort of shows you the complexity of these cars.
So this is the paint shop.
This is where the panels are all running through on an assembly line and robots are coming in and spraying them. It's fascinating. It looked like little animals running back and forth. And I watched the transition. It was spraying one panel, and then it's just swung around and started spraying the next panels coming along. They move a little faster than Barry.
Some parts of this line do have robotics, but there's also people, and the people have their hands in building these cars. I think that makes this assembly plant very special, and it makes the cars very special.
We're at the very end of the Corvette assembly line, and actually, as fascinating as the rest of it is, this is my favorite place because, you know, 5 cars that way, they're just having their first fluids put in them. Suspension end, then they go for their final tweaks underneath, and off they go. They're done. That's an amazing process.